I'm ready to tell you my secret now. I hear sales numbers. They speak to me. They say things all the time. See this list of Switch million sellers which Nintendo recently updated? To the untrained eye, this may seem like a mere list of figures, and to the casual fan, it may be the sort of thing that makes you go, those are some good numbers. Good for Switch. But to the obsessed YouTuber, this is more. These numbers say so much about the Switch, about the individual game series, about Nintendo's direction as a company. Lots of stuff. I know, I sound crazy, but if there's anyone in the world who knows if I'm crazy or not, it's me, right? So before you go calling someone to come collect me, open your mind for just a moment and let me tell you, nay, show you, what these particular sales numbers have to say. In all seriousness, it's no secret that sales numbers do mean a lot for a system and its games. Generally speaking, good sales equal customer satisfaction and communicate to a company that yes, we like this product, we want more products like this. There are of course exceptions, like when sales of a game are inflated due to high expectations and actual reception is mixed or even negative. To beat a thoroughly dead horse, just look at Paper Mario Sticker Star. That game sold decently well because of all the Paper Mario fans out there in the world. But when Color Splash came along, most of them said, fool me once, and steered clear of it, leading to pretty abysmal sales numbers, despite the game being much better than Sticker Star by most accounts. That's not extremely common though. Usually if a game sells a ton of units, it's because it's a game that a ton of people want to play. And this kind of discussion is particularly interesting when it comes to video games, seeing as they can be subject to so many changes between iterations. One game in a series can differ hugely from the last or the next. Plus, quality is really subjective, meaning that half the audience might like a particular style or mechanic, while the other half thinks it's complete junk. So let's take a good look at that million sellers list and talk about what we see. Specifically, I'm going to focus on the top 4 games because they're just so far above the rest, and I feel they have the most to say. Starting at the top, Super Mario Odyssey. Over 11 million sales. This number is incredible for more reasons than one. First off, that's an attach rate of more than 50%, meaning that 1 out of every 2 Switch owners bought the game. Slightly more than 1 out of 2 even. Then to compare the game to the previous 3D Mario, look at Super Mario 3D World. People liked the game, it reviewed really well, and it sold really well. Over 5.5 million units. That's a successful game right there. But that's only about half of Odyssey's numbers. In fairness, the Wii U install base was lower, so higher sales on Switch are to be expected, but it's how much higher they are that's interesting. The Switch install base is about 50% higher than the Wii U's was, yet the Mario sales are doubled. And the kicker, the thing that really puts this all into perspective, Super Mario 3D World is basically done selling. That number isn't likely to go up anymore. But Super Mario Odyssey, it hasn't even been out for a year. It's still selling and will continue to sell for the Switch's life. So what does this all mean? It means that this is the kind of Mario the majority of players are looking for. It means we like sandbox Marios, and we like creative and epic Marios. It means that a solidly designed but simplistic and creatively lacking Mario game like 3D World can sell well and we'll enjoy it. But if you want something that really pulls people in and gets them excited, Odyssey is how you do it. But Arlo, comparing Odyssey to 3D World isn't exactly fair. I mean, they've made other creative and epic Marios in the past, Galaxy 1 and 2 for instance. You're right, you're completely right, they have. So, for a little more perspective, let's look at the sales numbers for those games. Oh, look at that, Galaxy 2 has already been left in the dust and Odyssey is only a short jog away from passing Galaxy 1. Super Mario Galaxy 1, a game on a system with 5 times the install base that the Switch has right now. And again, Odyssey and the Switch will continue to sell for years. There's no doubt at all that it will far surpass Galaxy's sales, which will make it by far the best-selling 3D Mario of all time. I know there are plenty of people who were disappointed by the game and probably won't pick up the sequel if Nintendo ever makes one. Sequels often tend to sell less than their predecessors because of that exact reason. Not everyone will end up being happy enough with a game to get the sequel, and of course there are other reasons as well. Just look at Galaxy 1 versus Galaxy 2. But however you look at it, Odyssey is selling right now. It's selling like crazy. And Nintendo's gotta be looking at those numbers and going, dang, I guess people want more Marios like this one. I mean, at least if they want to do what's smart from a business standpoint. I know they like to do whatever weird thing they can come up with and surprise us, but that number right there, man, the future of Mario very likely hinges on that number. Like or loathe Odyssey's format, it made a heck of of a splash in the overall market. Now let's talk about Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is interesting for different reasons. The original Mario Kart 8 was the single best-selling game on the Wii U, coming in at nearly 8.5 million units. The Switch's 10 million technically shows a lower attach rate, but that number is still bonkers. I mean, this is a port. The Switch has brought in a lot of people who skipped the Wii U, so again, high sales numbers are to be expected here. Not everyone got to play it the first time around. But we know that there is a lot of overlap here. A whole lot of Switch owners were Wii U owners and clearly double-dipped, and that helps drive the point home that the Switch is just a humongously better system. The fact that the appeal is so much bigger and broader really just says something about it. It's something we already know, of course, and that I've talked about endlessly, but I never fail to enjoy seeing just how much the Switch is creaming the Wii U. As I've said before, I'm not happy that the Wii U failed, I'm just happy that the Switch is doing so well comparatively. I'm happy to see that Nintendo can re-release a game on it, and that game can outsell the original without effort simply because it's the Switch! Also, before we move on, you know what else Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's sales numbers tell us? That Wii U ports are a good idea. I mean, a fraction of the work they did on the original game to sell substantially more copies. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Deluxe was one of the most profitable games Nintendo's ever released. That was a truckload of free money for almost no effort, and it's still got a long life ahead of it. Next up, we've got Breath of the Wild, and this one is very similar to Super Mario Odyssey. Zelda is also a series that sees constant changes with each iteration, even more so than Mario, I'd say. Nintendo is always tinkering with mechanics and adding them and taking them away and changing the themes and styles, and I'm sure they're always eager to see what we think of each game when it finally releases. Breath of the Wild has sold over 9 million units on the Switch, and again, it will continue to sell for the next 4 or 5 years at least. At the moment, it's the second highest selling Zelda game of all time. It's only beaten by Twilight Princess if you count that game's HD remaster, and even considering that, it's less than 1 million away from taking the crown and will quite easily come Christmas time, maybe even sooner. Like Odyssey, by the time the Switch's life is over, it will be the king of its respective hill. And while Odyssey will be the best-selling 3D Mario ever, Breath of the Wild will be the best-selling Zelda, period. Once again, this is a loud and clear message to Nintendo about the kinds of Zelda games that bring in a crowd. And as with Odyssey, it has its fair share of critics. But looking at the overall reception, they're the minority. Breath of the Wild is another turning point for an important Nintendo franchise, and it would be silly of them not to chase that success. But let's get some perspective on this one as well. The previous Zelda, Skyward Sword, sold under 4 million units. It was outsold by Super Paper Mario, Link's Crossbow Training, and 2 Mario and Sonic Olympics games. And if you remember, Skyward Sword was the most linear, in my opinion, insultingly hand-holding Zelda ever, with motion controls built into the very core of the game. Nintendo tried a lot of new stuff with that game, and I'm not going to say that all of it was bad, but they learned a lesson about what people wanted in their Zelda games. And did I mention that it failed to break the 4 million unit mark despite being on a system with 100 million unit install base? 100 million people had Wiis, and not even 4% of them could be bothered to play the latest installment in one of Nintendo's biggest and most important franchises. But Arlo, you might be saying, Skyward Sword required the Wii Motion Plus accessory. Surely that must have had something to do with the low sales. Well, I would say maybe you were right. If Wii Sports Resort hadn't sold 33 million copies. A third of Wii owners already had Wii Motion Pluses. Also, come on, if you really want to play the new Zelda, are you gonna let a little thing you can get used for like 10 bucks get in your way? No. Skyward Sword was a lesson for Nintendo. They were doing the wrong thing with Zelda. Breath of the Wild, though? They're clearly doing the right thing now. This is clearly what people are looking for. And it goes further than just shaping Zelda's style. It's great that they discovered how much their audience values freedom and challenge, but perhaps even more importantly, they discovered how much their audience can value scope. They obviously put an enormous amount of effort into Breath of the Wild. Way more than they put into most of their other games, and that paid off for them. It showed them that yes, there's a place for simpler, cheaper stuff that sells millions and millions of units anyway, but huge projects like this can really get people's attention. Ambition is attractive to potential buyers. For another dose of perspective, remember how Twilight Princess is currently the highest selling Zelda ever, if you count the remaster? Like Skyward Sword, it was on a system with 100 million users, and unlike Skyward Sword, it gave the Zelda fans everything they wanted. It was more realistic, more mature, you could turn into a wolf and fight on horseback. Everyone was stoked for it. And yet Breath of the Wild is going to outsell it with a fraction of the install base. 1/5 of it. How's that for a message? How's that for an audience pleaser? Then the final thing the Breath of the Wild sales tell us? Well, it sold about 1 million units on Wii U, so if you consider that it's a really popular game that a lot of people like, it stands to reason that if it were a Wii U exclusive, it would have sold way more on that system. Since it's not though, we can sort of get an idea of how many Switch owners were previously Wii U owners, that magic number that we've talked about a lot. The exact number will always elude us, but comparing these two numbers paints a pretty darn good picture. If the game only sold 1 million on Wii U, that means that tons of the people who would have bought it got it on Switch instead. That's the way I see it, at least. That's what these numbers whisper to me in the dark of night. Lastly, let's touch on Splatoon 2. I won't go too deep into this because I want to make a bigger video about Splatoon in the future, but I'll just say, dude, Splatoon 1 was already a smash hit on the Wii U. This was a brand new IP that instantly cemented itself as one of Nintendo's highest selling series. And now, with the Switch, there you go. If this number here says anything, it's that Splatoon is one of the big guys now, and it's here to stay. This is an absurd number for a series so experimental and so young. Honorable mention, did you know Tropical Freeze on Switch has already outsold its Wii U counterpart? Outsold. Another port of an older game that actually sold more on Switch in just a few months. That is nuts. Or shall I say, bananas? I hope this has taught you, my friends, that sales numbers speak. I hope you are now a believer and that you've called off the white van that was on its way to my house with a straitjacket. So, my newly enlightened viewers, why don't you head down to the comments and tell me what these numbers say to you? In the meantime, I'm gonna keep listening. What's that? Xenoblade Chronicles 2's 1.42 million? You want me to put cheese in Lockston's underwear drawer? I don't know if that's a good idea, but if you say so.